Hello everyone, welcome to my oil painting class, and today we once more looking at the artist work, artist called by Irina Yermolova, Ukrainian artist, very inspirational, full of color and life, beautiful loose painting technique. So we're looking at a still life with a couple of jugs, perhaps a table with a chair, a few pairs. So the more you look and explore, you start finding loads of connections with them. Great masters of still life, from Renaissance to Baroque time. And Irina Yermolova bringing it all together in the most wonderful way, in most kind of quite contemporary way at the same time, with her very loose and quick, sketchy color approach. So what I have on my palette, color-wise, I have some white, I have some ochre, olive green or any yellowish green, crimson, magenta, violet, ultramarine, and cobalt blue or cerulean. Both will be good. We also need some black, so any black or Payne's gray. I'll get that one out later on as well. So what we'll do first, we'll do a quick sketch of all the objects on our board. Now I'm using the white background so we can work with some runny paints, and we can work with some thicker paints afterwards. So once our sketch is done, we'll then start using some diluted layers before we get to the thicker paints. So I'm going to just start using a little bit of turps, so my drawing almost like settles in, and we'll have a bit more permanent marks in it. It's not going to dry perfectly, but it might get absorbed into the board more than just lovely oil runniness of my 3 oils mixture. So I'm going to go for some ochre and just dilute it with some turps. Okay, and that's going to be my sketching color for today. Nothing else, no white, no other colors. And let's look for big objects. So one of the important parts here is our big jug here. So if I were to divide the whole piece into half, it looks like it's more or less into the, so that's, if that's going to be a half, it's going to be somewhere in the top, sorry, in the right hand side. Now it's hidden with the fruit, so if I'll place it as a big box, maybe a handle will come in here as well. So far, if I'll just place it as a big shape and wait till the other objects will come into place, just in case if I need to move it, if I need to look into its shape a bit more. Then we have a small, gorgeous blue pot. Again, if I were to leave it as a simplified shape for now. And then we have, it gives me an opportunity to judge how much space I'm going to have left for the table. So we have a flat side of the tabletop, and we have a vertical part of the cloth, or perhaps draping down the side of the table. Okay, something, maybe the corner of the table is changing, the light is changing there. Okay, and that's light for part of the cloth. Maybe there is a few angles, maybe it's a round table, how things are draping here. It's quite difficult to understand, but that's okay. We can make those guesses and suggestions. We don't have to tell all the story. There are loads of fabrics on this side. overlapping each other. But looking at the space I need to create to show the side of the draping fabrics and how much space I'll need on the table before my blue pot. I think it's might need to be a little smaller. So using my kitchen towel, I can remove some of these lines. And because I'm using tips and my board reasonably absorbent, I can see my lines are staining a little bit of the paper, of the board surface, but that's okay. Maybe that pot will go a tiny bit higher. Again, those adjustments are part of the development here. Okay, my next big element on the painting will be identifying the corner on the left where we have a shadow and we have a chair. So let's have a look at that lighter shape, or we might say an outline of a shadow, or both really. So let's find that spot. It also will tell us a rough idea where the shadow is going to be next to the big jug. And then the chair. Okay, that red chair will come in here. Let's get a big statement for that. Quite a good angle here, so it must be standing quite away from us, so we have good perspective. Maybe I'll bring it tiny bit more close to the left. Okay, and maybe just remove this earlier line. And it gives me an opportunity to have my shadow slightly smaller and the light a little bit bigger. Good. I'm seeing now the more look, the hidden elements of the of our still life. I think our blue pot is actually a mug because there is a little handle, unless it might be just a decorative pot with a handle there. And also I'm comparing the size of this blue pot. I'm constantly looking at the same objects as I'm checking them all out. The pears are probably the same size as our pot. Obviously they're slightly wider at the bottom and narrower at the top, so that gives us that opportunity to see, well, sometimes it triggers our eyes to see them tiny bit smaller, but they're actually quite the same size. So let's find their placements. Okay, this one is really close to the edge of the table. Again, don't spend too much time drawing them, just in case they're in the wrong place, just in case they're wrong size. Just, you can even do them as a big oval before doing any final shapes or character building. Okay. So perhaps that will stay there. And let's find the other pairs on the plate. So in front of our the jug and the small pot, have a very much lost shape of the plate. Only when you start searching for the details, you start spotting, oh, is it overlapping here? Is it going over this area? The pears are placed and there are loads of reflections. So if that shape of the plate will get lost as we paint in more and more details, it's kind of absorbed by the environment. So it's perhaps all a glass plate, which is much more easy explanation for it. And we have one pear which is cut into half. So I'm going to start with that one first. So we've got a big shape of light. So if you break it into an oval and then partially divide it into that symmetrical shape, then we can build up. I might just pick up a tiny bit of violet so we can see shapes tiny bit stronger when my lines, lines will start overlapping. So I can put it a tiny bit more taller, longer, elongated here. Okay, so I started with an oval and I could break it down into more sub shapes. That's nice and round at the base. Okay. And let's again find the other shapes of the pears just to see, can we fit things in? Have we got the right size? Maybe I made it too big. Maybe I made it too long. Okay, maybe it is a little bit too wide and long at the back. By the time I'll decide to add my other pears, how tall are they going to be in comparison to the height of the jug? The other pear is lying down, so all we see is its width. It's getting narrower there and it's getting nice and round. Base of it. So I'm using some of them ovals kind of to support my understanding of the shape. Perhaps even the shadow of it. Now, these are small details, so they could be worked out afterwards. Gives us an opportunity to decide if that pear is hanging over the plate or is it fully lying in the plate. Okay. Does the plate need to be extended a tiny bit more further? Or the edge of the table could gain a little bit more extra space. Those little adjustments are good as we develop our work. Okay. Maybe that pear is looking more further away from us than we want it to be. Okay, let's get this one simplified even more. Right, and there looks like another fruit or another pear, just almost sideways. And we can see a little bit of red, orangey color, maybe just looking away from us, but it does look like a nice stalk here. and also the end of the plate. By you can see some lovely changes of color in that plate. That's how we know it's the edge of it. Okay. And then we can look back at the rest of our objects. Again, come back perhaps to the small pot. You can see a lovely oval. Okay. The whole shape could be much more round now. That's a beautiful, very precious mug with some coffee. Is it a little bit taller, but it's actually behind the plate, so that's why we can't see all of the details of it immediately. So I just think sketching it behind the plate as a full shape. If you need to check if it's symmetrical, maybe put a line in the middle, double checking. And I will start using some thicker paints, and some of these lines will be disappearing, but at least we're planning, we're looking, we're finding those structures, even if they're not perfect straight away. I also want to check the dark shape of the jug and have a nice character building for it. Now I'm moving on back to my violet with ochre, so then I can see my final lines, or more the lines which I'm picking up as more important ones. So it's easier to see the correct outlines. Now the jug, it looks like there is a space between the plate. So that is my edge of the plate. There's a little bit of color between the blue pot, the pears, and the jug, and it's perhaps the fabric. So it might be not the edge of the jug, but it might be the fabric's folded and it just covers part of the jug. But the jug itself is behind it. Let's have a look. But drawing it as a whole shape, sometimes it's easier because kind of going underneath of all our objects, so we can kind of find the much more exciting curvature. So now let's find the overall curve of this beautiful, elegant shape. Maybe let's find the change of the form. Sometimes the supportive lines are almost like a skeleton of lines telling us the shape, and also some of the reflections will follow those lines. So if I'm doing that structure kind of almost like a fence lines, they're just helping me out to identify what's happening to the form. Okay, maybe it's a little bit too long, otherwise my pot's going to be too big on the left. But I like that elegant curve, so maybe just make it slightly shorter here. So then the handle, so everything is designed, comes very beautifully and elegant. The form is flowing one shape to another. Okay. And maybe that shape will be symmetrical, more symmetrical with the right hand side. That's how we'll find that line. And then everything else is going to get hidden. And then we can come back to the lines we can't, the lines which are in front of us, in front of the jug, rather than what we can't see. But once that structure is there, it's easier to see the key lines. I think that's much better now. And I can remove all the supportive lines. So I find it's much easier to draw the whole shape together, of that jug whole shape, rather than just looking, oh, is that line going a little bit more here or a little bit more there? I can tweak it once I've identified it and once I've seen that structure as a whole. But before that, it's a little harder to shape things up. Right, we've got a handle here, which I've smudged again. But again, we can work with that afterwards with color. Right, and I'm going to finalize a few lines for the fabrics, edge of the table. So we definitely have a change of light. Maybe again, that fabric is turning that way. There's some more elongated lines and then shadows coming up that direction. So perhaps it's a round table. There's a beautiful, beautiful blue. It might be part of the fabrics thrown on a table. There's a nice, lovely shadow, the beautiful pink. I might just remind myself of that shape as well. And then finally, where the fabrics, so there's so many of them, they're piling up. Yeah, they're just quite high up. Or maybe that the table is just so wide. That oval of the table is so wide, but it does look quite a big volume of fabrics as they overlap in this left corner. And then they cascade down. The chair will have a shadow here as well. And some lovely shadows under the pears. And we can see again the turn of the fabrics, how they hang down the edge where the white is going to be. So there will be loads and loads of colors. We'll just work with them directly as patterns and shapes. So without getting lost, just identifying some horizontal lines for the shadows under the pears. And then everything else will be just cascading down. We'll find some reds, golden colors, maybe some scarves. There might be some other oriental fabrics, giving that lovely rich environment. Now, some of my pears, my jug look, well, the pot looks a little bit quirky and a bit not perfect, but I know when I start bringing big blocks of color, it will all fall into place. So I'm not too worried. I'm happy with the shape of my big jug, and I'm happy where the fruit are and their size. That's more important at this stage. So I'm going to stop for the drawing and we'll start getting our paints out. Right, I have a range of brushes in front of me. I have a long bristled flat synthetic brush, and that will be the first brush I'll be using to introduce some oil and some runniness for the painting. And then I have various sizes filbert brushes, including very small ones, to work into some of the nuances and highlights and do a little bit of drawing later on with the brushes. So I'll put those on the side for the moment. And now I will be using my oils. So linseed oil mixed with a little bit of herbs and my drying agent. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to soak my brush into this, and I want to create some runny ochres to show a little bit of thinner layers of paint on the wall, and perhaps partially behind the pears, partially behind the fabrics and the chair. So I'm going to apply much more runnier, oily surface. So very, very oily, very slimy area. You might not be able to see anything there yet. It's quite transparent. If I want to apply thicker layers of paint later on and have exciting smudgy touches, I need to have that very smooth surface in the first place. I'm going to do some for the pears here. Okay. Even the pot again, so then the paints will be applied very easily. I want some more runniness of the color over the pears and some of the fabrics. Okay. So if you can't see it, don't panic. You will see it as we'll start applying some ochre here. So I picked up a separate palette so I can just work with very oily surface, and I'm going to use my ochre. It's quite strong, so I might have a little bit of white in it, but very diluted. Just want to be paler. I think it appears quite a dark tone. Just want to have a tiny bit more lighter. Now, looking at our artist work, that could even have a dab of olive green. So all very runny. You can see it wants to escape from my palette. So anything yellowish green, but still quite transparent, quite loose. I love the texture Irina Yermolova achieves in her painting by creating some highlights very naturally. So what she does, she just leaves some gaps. So what I might do, I might just imitate that by kind of leaving some spaces, perhaps, and painting over. And then the paint will settle into the gaps I have created. We might have a little bit of extra exciting texture, then I can the rest apply this transparent layer of ochreish, greenish. It's not much of a green, it does appear more yellow. Right, let me see if I can work with reflective surface here. Right, that's good. So I just put my this bit more vertical. Okay, it's sliding now. Hold on. And let's apply any more of this ochre, that lovely runny color. Anywhere else we can place it. Very much watercolor-like approach. Quite a lot of oil, olive green, bit of ochre, bit of white if needed, if it's too dark. I might not see where this color comes from, but it will support our future colors afterwards. Right, where else this color might be on the pears. So for the moment, I'm just going to do all of the pears the same runny oil. Even the red pear, I might just keep it together as a unity. And then let's look for similar color elsewhere in the painting. Maybe part of the fabrics it's present. Well, it is transparent, while it is quite loose. There's some reflections on the plate. I might just exaggerate it and put it a little bit more. There's something else on the fabrics there. Okay. I need more oil. Right, once we applied our ochre, my surface is reflecting quite a lot now, but let's see how the thicker paint will start being applied, and hopefully we'll be back to less reflective surface, but if not, I might need to adjust my screen again. So now I'm going to focus on some of the background colors, starting from the color of the chair, the color of the fabrics, some of the reds behind the kind of the corners of the jug, and some of that lovely deep magenta-y, crimson, violet, using quite a lot of oil still. So let's have some crimson. Okay, if part of the crimson will be applied over the ochre, that will be very exciting to see that interaction, how the colors will be melting into each other. I'm going to have a little bit of violet and crimson together to have all of this corner painted. Part of it will be, I'll go over with paler color afterwards, more solid, but I'm preparing my surface for future. So that's my underlaying painting. A bit of red, a bit of violet, and ochre. It could have been a bit of magenta. Okay. Same I'll do partially over the pot here, the jug. Nice and strong. I'm going to let it run. If you start losing your lines, just persevere still painting with that loose red. Maybe a little bit more red and ochre. Want to see some of that extra warmth. Maybe just fresh crimson. Part of this pear could have that. Maybe a bit of fabric. Maybe put in a little bit more fresh crimson again. Nice and strong. Okay, I want to stay in those places. maybe over the handle, maybe on all of that area. Let it stay there. Nice dark corner, maybe there will be more violet and crimson together. That's very deep corner. Painting over the edges, perhaps even a little bit more further into my lighter fabric because I can overlap it. I think I'm going to go for all of this corner with some extra violet. All of that shadow, just painted the whole corner there. Let's drop it even lower. Well, right, there's some more of that similar red somewhere over the fabrics. We can even paint all of the fabrics if we wanted to, because there are loads of darker blues on top. Our mug will have a little bit of that color. Very exciting. If the paints run into other objects, that's all fine as well. Don't be concerned. Let it all stay there. Okay, so I'll wipe my runny red so I have a bit more space on my palette. Right, as our reds and some lighter purples are done, I want to introduce some darker violets and some Payne's grey. In the diluted version first. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use quite a lot of oil, bring my violet and a dab of Payne's grey so we can still see that violet when we see the white surface underneath. So it's not just going to be black, it's blacky violet, to have that lovely black shape of the pot. I want that transparency still being there. So let's work a little bit more into the pot. Okay, that's gone a little too low. That's my fabric. I want to cover all of my jug here, all of this area. Runny first. We will have some more solid, thicker black. So far, it's more transparent violet over some of our reds. Okay. Don't have to leave anything out. And any other darker shadows. Again, they could still be a bit more transparent. They'll become a bit more solid, that's okay as well. Whichever way it will come out. I've got some nice darker shadows on the plate under the pears, so they will stand out. A nice darker corner. Okay. Some transparent layers for the fabrics. Some direction. That's a part of the shadow behind the chair. Back. Some of the fabrics. or shadows under the pears. Okay, that might be enough for now. So quite solid shadows, so transparent, but what I mean solid, quite dark, quite quickly applied. That give the weight to the painting very quickly. So we've got loads of highlights, we've got loads of shadows. I'm going to work into middle tones now. Now I'm finally ready to start working into the thicker layers. So I'm going to wash my brush, so I'll need a little bit lighter tones first. And let's bring, as we have loads of highlights and shadows, let's go for some medium darknesses. So for example, the lovely grays in the shadows, the lovely ochres at the front. I actually quite fancy starting with some of the ochres and maybe pears. So I'm going to go for quite a bit of white. Just using quite a lot of oil as well on my brush. I want to have the first thicker layer coming in reasonably runny. If your surface is very oily, maybe have a little bit more thicker consistency. That's okay. So some ochre and some olive green. I think that will give me a nice color for the pears as a starting point of the first thicker strokes. Okay, so let's apply that. If it will start catching the colors from surrounding areas, embrace it. See how it will smudge or bring extra darkness to it or extra texture to it. So embrace it. Mine hasn't picked up anything yet, so I'm going to leave that for the moment, but I'm going to keep working with my color here. That's much more picking up another extra color from underneath. That's good. Same for the pears close to us on the left. There will be other colors coming in as reflections. Just think of them as big shapes for now. Okay. Embrace the softness of the colors next to them. That red, perhaps here. That red might be just touching more of the side of my other pair. The red on the further distant pair will have much more strength. And let's create some more warmer ochre, so maybe ochre and some crimson. And let's do the fabric of the table, folding towards us, maybe more ochre on the left hand side corner, so we'll have a little bit more light there. See if we can blend it together. Okay. Any other light? Some more lighter fabrics, folding in. One might have a little bit more extra darker red if we missed it. Okay. And I'm going to move on into more red and ochre mixed together, crimson and ochre mixed together, and this lovely smooth runny paint. For example, I can see some of that color on my on the jug, on the handle. Maybe some of it will be on the side, going some over the darker violets. I'm doing a little bit of color placement. I know it's part of the jug or the surrounding of the jug, but so it would be just a little bit of color here and there without too much attachments to the form, more of the intuitive application of color. Maybe in between here, little dabs. Okay. Maybe the round shape of the pear. It's a line on. So we're in the stage of creative mess. Maybe a little too light, but it's okay. Can wipe it off. So let's see how those colors will settle as we'll be picking up some others. Right, now let's have a look at some grays. I love that warm gray at the back. So I'm going to start with some white, whatever left on my brush from the previous color mixing, to create that extra gray. I'm going to go for a little bit of red, and I think I'm going to go for a little bit of cobalt blue just to see what pinky gray, bluey gray I might get, and a dab of Payne's gray. I do want some warmth into that gray, but also eventually some darkness. Okay, so let's bring it around the chair now. Shape the corner of the chair. I think that's maybe a little bit too light, so tiny bit more depth. Again, if it's too red, I can cool it off with some blue. Could have done it even better with a green, but I don't think my olive green will do much. Emerald green would have cooled it off to a very good gray, but I think we're almost there. Yeah, that's better. Oh, that's good. So let's shape the stool, the chair. Okay, we've got a nice shadow coming up behind it. You might have a little bit extra light as it's going towards our white. So a dab of white will be good. Again, depending on how runny your surface is, you can add more oil or reduce the oil on a kind of volume of oil on your brush. You can go for a little bit more solid, thick strokes now. Okay, I quite like thin lines which show almost maybe the stitches of the chair. I think I just a little over painted this corner, but that's okay. And where this gray might be going, part of the fabrics again, maybe just how it's comes through. Anywhere else a similar gray could be at the front, maybe next to the plate, under the plate. Maybe it's reflecting within the surface of the plate, just under the pears here. And we'll have some blue fabric or that light traveling, so that's grays here as well. Coming close to the jug and that lovely flatness of the gray. Can we apply it on top of our dark violets? Can we find perhaps a little reflective lines, just a hint, a little drag, how the paints will smudge. Okay. And there's some lovely pink. I'll go for a bit more magenta here. It's a pinky gray here. Magenta and my current gray. That's gonna come somewhere here beautifully. And then I can go for more solid, a little bit more darker gray. So if I'll go for just Payne's gray with any of my colors here in the palette, just want to have much more stronger darkness. And then go and shape. If some of my ochre will be a little bit preserved next to the jug as a little highlight or some sort of shape. And again, as I'm going towards the center of the painting, I'm going to make it slightly the gray, tiny bit more lighter, just adding a dab of white. If our red is on the background is a little bit more transparent, that will be fantastic. If we're partially losing it, that's okay as well. Okay. And I'm going to check if there any more of the gray meets the eye. Any other smudges might need to come in. Okay, I think we're good. And then I'm ready to just wipe my brush and work with more lighter gray. So the gray which will create the light between the chair and the jug here. So if I'll keep it just gray, might be a little bit plain. If I'll leave it as a white, I think if I were to bring a dab of my ochre into that, if your surface is very wet here, you might not need to do it. Mine is a little bit more absorbent than I wanted. So I will bring some stronger oily surface. Going round our left out highlights. Mine is not as effective as I wanted. Again, I might interpret them differently later. Maybe I'll make some white paint run there. But now big exciting strokes coming more close to the jug here. Maybe put in one of the strokes as part of the surface of the jug, as it will become more highly reflective, as we'll start coming close and shape it. And those little segments of red or segments of violet we applied earlier on, that's when they start be those amazing key components in our painting. The jug immediately became three-dimensional the moment I applied extra light next to it. Maybe there will be more reflections on that surface here. Maybe there will be a little bit more reflections on the handle. Again, I can smudge them further once thicker, darker tones will come in. I also think that will be a good color for my open pear, the pear which is cut here. It's quite whitish at the same time, not just fresh, direct white. Maybe the color of the plate will start. So I'm using the same color I used here in the center. I'm going to follow the color through. Okay, maybe my pears will start having a little pre-planned highlights before they will have bold little highlights. So there will be some stage of them getting a lighter spot. Okay, maybe this pear will have more light. Okay. Some of my fabrics will start getting fresh white shortly, but let's prepare it with an off-white color. Any other? I think I could do a little bit of, just a little more light somewhere there. I think it might be a small advantage for me to get extra color. A tiny bit more close to the pear. That's good. So major grays, pinky grays, more bluey, darker grays, lighter ochre-like grays are done as well. Right, I just spotted I've forgotten some darker gray behind the handle of the jug, so I'm going to bring that darkness back while I still have it on my palette. I want to leave some of the red there though, so if you're working into it, just don't cover it all, just maybe place the darkness, which might, I think that might be a bit too light now, that highlight. Okay, that's better. Good. And now I'm going to wash my brush and I want to introduce some blue. That lovely, bold, exciting blue. So some tips for my brush, because I want to use the same size brush first. I don't want it to go smaller scale brush yet. So let's have some extra white. Let's have some cerulean blue. So it will stay gorgeous and fresh, especially against all the reds and oranges, all those warm colors. So let's go for lighter cerulean first, and then we can make a slightly darker version of it. Now it might be reflecting here on the palette. Let's place it here and find out. Okay, that's still quite pale. Let's have it slightly darker then. Okay. So I'm going to do all of my pot except the opening in this lovely blue before I change shadows and do anything else to it. Okay, so all of it is there. Form of it is still a bit wonky, which is okay. I'm gonna shape it up better as I'll start introducing other colors. but let's follow where the same color goes. Maybe on the side of it. Is that a fabric? Is it reflection? What is it? I'm not too sure. No, I need to know exactly. Maybe there's a bit more fabric coming to the front here. Maybe the same blue will be on the base of the pears. Again, that might be a bit more reflection, connection of that light. Perhaps even reflecting from the exciting fabrics, which we'll do later on. And then I'll do slightly darker version, actually maybe more darker version. And it will have the right hand side of my pot mug. That is going to be here. And blend those colors, kind of help yourself with the strokes, which might identify the shape, maybe follow the form. Okay. Can that blue come anywhere else? Maybe part of my handle here. Maybe I'll just do a little, again, sketch. So that's why we're sketching as we're painting. We're adding, we're adjusting, we're moving. Okay. Can I use a little bit more ultramarine? Yes. Maybe not a little bit, maybe quite substantial amount actually. As my brush is full of white and lighter tones, so I need to pick up quite a lot of ultramarine for it to be strong afterwards. Now I can see some beautiful ultramarine on the plate next to my jug here, and I think it will all probably reflect that part of the darkness. Maybe there will be a little bit of ultramarine on the pot. You can see some beautiful ultramarine on part of my fabrics, which I haven't quite painted yet. There's only hints of it. There will be much more solid paints there. Even maybe perhaps darker ultramarine. So again, I'm looking for placements of color on the base of the jug here next to the pears. Again, perhaps a little awkward in size, but by the time I'll apply more solid darker violet, that will be good. So that playfulness of the color, even if I were to overpaint it later, maybe small volumes of it will remain, or maybe it will remind me to come back to some of that color. Okay. Right, now let's go for some white. So loads of white. I have partially cleaned my brush, but it's not perfectly clean. So if there are some remains of blue, that's okay. Loads of oil. Okay, so then my white will start picking up other colors and continue smudging into my object. So for example, I'll get some white on the side of my pot here, maybe on the top as it's partially reflecting. There are loads of little highlights. I'm not too worried about that because we still have quite a lot to do before the highlights. I might just put a couple here on the plate, maybe somewhere close to the fabrics. Let's paint some space between the pot and the pears. The pears will have little reflections on their bases of white. So that would be good, the same as highlights. Okay, think I'm going to do some of the fresher white gaps of light as well. So I'm not going to do any reflections on the jug or the other two pairs yet. Maybe the pairs are okay, but maybe not the jug yet. And the white fabric as it comes around the blue. And the white fabric as it drapes over under the pot. Might need to shape my pot a little bit more here. Okay. Some of my earlier grays might have helped me with the pot. Just want to persuade the oil to run. Not naturally. Okay. Some more reflection on the side here. Okay, so that suggestiveness is much more. Right, let's now come back to using a smaller brush and work for a bit more details for our pears and look into the dark tones of the jug. I actually might go and pick up even smaller brush first to use some of the outlines, to create some outlines for my pears. So I'm going to have some oil, I'm going to have some violet, and I'm going to mix it with my olive green. Okay, so I've got some lovely browny violet color, and if in places it will be looking a bit more green, that's all good as well. So let's have a little bit of the line returning to our pears, maybe a little bit more of an outline, and partially maybe look at the stalks. The runniness of the paint, you can see how reflective it is exciting. Okay, maybe this pear will have more of that line, and it's also, if it blends with our colors and creates extra smudges with the previous layers, that will be good. So encourage that, and maybe a bit more of an outline for it, maybe a bit more broken outline. Okay, if it's slightly too strong, I'll get a tissue here. And gently wipe my brush, and then just want to make these lines not too strong, but partially disappearing. In the past, we used that ochre, yeah, or the color of the apples or pears, whichever we were painting, which will partially smudge. So in a way, we're doing the opposite approach today, applying the line after the major color's been introduced. But it's a similar effect could be achieved. Okay. Anything else for my pot here? Might be a nice reflection if my paint is getting light, because I'm applying quite a lot of it. Let's just mix some more of that color, and maybe perhaps go for some of the outlines of this pot. It looks a little bit too perfect, this pot, so maybe I need to use another brush and just introduce some oil, or introduce kind of just smudging some of the edges. They're a little bit too perfect here for me. And I can bring some fresher highlights. Just want to get rid of that perfection. I want it more suggestive rather than exact. And that's already gives some mystery. Maybe even this color will come out outside the pot. That's quite good. I can scratch into that surface to get the line I want. Okay, maybe I want slightly wider one. Okay, maybe the ovals will be partially scratched. Okay, that's a nice and exciting, much more suggestive shape, much more reflective shape. Right, any darker, again back to ochre and violet. I can create a little shadow. Again, it just touches up a few corners without overworking it. Maybe I'll make a little wider opening, again too perfect, so perhaps I can just gently smudge into part of it. I did like that lovely pale red, so I'll just bring part of it back. Reflective surfaces still remain in there. Again, just let's bring a dab of oak and olive green for the dark corner. Maybe it's a reflection of the pears there. Just makes it a bit more stable, a little bit more solid. And I think this corner could have done a bit more darkness of the violet. Okay, that's good. The small nuances of those shapes make the work a little bit more focused. It still has that a lot of lost and found edges. We have quite a lot to go there. But I'm working now a little bit at a time, so I just touched up the pear, but the shape of the pear gone funny, gone too slimmed off. So let's just rebuild that, perhaps. And again, let's come back maybe to the outline. Okay, let's follow the form. My pear is a little bit more redder than greener, but that's okay. It's working there. Any white I can bring back again, just to show that smooth surface. If that surface is more round now. Okay, good. Again, continuing maybe the outline of this pear. Tiny bit wider stalk, just giving it a little bit of something extra. Any fresh whites on it as I'm working on this pear. Very nice, very exciting. Good. Right, let's work maybe into my other 2 pairs, 3 pairs, 4 pairs on the plates. Okay, so work into their shapes, maybe support some of the shadows. Find a little bit more sharp edges. Okay, I realized I've overpainted my pair, which is lying down. So let's bring back that form for it. And use the lines to bring its shape back. Maybe that division, that opening where the seeds are, maybe using some fresh olive green to connect the colors. Just working a little bit more into the details. Stronger violet. Might support the outer shape. That's it, it suddenly popped out now from the darks and it's all getting a bit more silhouette around it. That's good. I think I might more sterile pot might just get a bit more extra darkness there as well. Good. I'm happy to start working on the other pairs now. Let's get, it's a little bit lost and found edges here. As long as you work into it, and it gives you the form and understanding. That's one pair, that's another one, or kind of one is melting to another, one shape is moving to another. That's fantastic. I really like this one. And I think I need a tiny bit more support on the side here just to show it's that's its narrow part is going away from us. And what is actually happening to it. Here, maybe I'll sketch that one a little bit more. Okay, and again, put a little dab for my shadow to bring the shape back. I wanted to do another stalk there. And this might have a lighter stalk. Well, I haven't painted, finished the jug there yet. That pair looking quite exciting as it is. This one is almost there again, just doing a few highlights and a couple of darker silhouettes next to it to offset the existing pair. I do love some of the reds around it, so if I can preserve some of them, gorgeous. Maybe to create extra space, if I scratch into this red again to give more suggestiveness, that the reflective surface is very exciting. with my plate will have a bit more oily smudges, oily reflections. Okay, that's two similar lines, so let's get rid of that, but maybe a stalk will be a good scratch. Yeah, that's come out beautiful. So very happy about these pairs. This one could go with a tiny bit more lighter side. That's it, so it's settled much more into that depth. Of being behind. Good. Right, let's have a look. Just spotted I could do with another. I've got some lovely volumes for these pairs. Just looking at my two separate ones here, I think I could do a slightly darker green next to the highlight and maybe smudge part of the highlight to create extra depth. Put that stronger green. So I'm still working on adjusting things. Painting one pair gives me an opportunity to evaluate other areas, or painting another object. That's better, that's more exciting in color. That will have a little bit more extra darker green as well, but olive green is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful color. So I'm not scared of going over, and that's much better. That's much more exciting, both pairs. This highlight maybe was too big as well, so that's really good. Okay, now finally let's go back to the jug now. Right, let's have some beautiful fabrics applied here next to our pairs on the left, and then we'll use some similar colors for the jug and finish things off. So some thicker paints, but very oily. I'm going to use some ultramarine, maybe very little white. I think if I were to put some white, I'll see the depth of it, but maybe then I'll need tiny bit of black to make that blue stronger and deeper. Okay, so it will be a darker blacky blue, indigo. Maybe some fresh blue will be preserved from my earlier strokes, or I might need to apply a little bit more over. Now, if we can leave some of the exciting colors we already applied with runny paints, those violets, those pinks, in some sort of presence, that would be fantastic. But if they will be partially covered or mainly covered, it's okay as well. So let's work with these darker tones. I think these are some sort of oriental fabrics because of the volume of little glimpses of gold in them or red in them. So I will try to have that still life fascination. Yeah, don't be scared of using some black and violet. That will be good as well to show some extra darkness. For example, in some of the corners, so that's that shiny almost like a black velvet effect. Will be exciting next to the pears. Maybe increasing the darkness of the shadows under the pears. Okay, so that glow of light will become immediate. Okay, still have a little bit of extra white here, but I think I will work with it in a different way. So nice dark violet interacting. Okay, just checking anything under our plate. Maybe a little bit of spin. Maybe a little corner here over the red. Maybe a shadow going away from under our plate on the right. I want more or less to finish this corner. So perhaps my chair will have a little more details. I want to have maybe a shadow next to it, or maybe one of my lines come out too light. Okay. Let's finish off some of these fabrics by bringing some extra golden color. If I use some white and ochre and just place few more, quite like that dab I already have there, but maybe I'll support it with few more, just to show that pattern of the folded fabrics, which we can't quite differentiate, but that smooth surface of ornaments is present there. And I also want to bring maybe some more fresh violet, so a little bit of white and violet, quite strong in tone. So that white space I have here again. So we've got a variety of colors in the fabrics, loads of them very dark, but the blue, the reds, the violets, just show that richness of perhaps Middle Eastern designs. Just want to make sure it does feel like it's folding away, not just dabs. Okay. And that glow. That's looking good. And this violet with a little of cerulean, I can see this beautiful color next to my right hand side of the pears. There's a glow of red there as well, so I might just partially leave it. That blue is there, violet color. Okay, so that's going to be more of a darker, more violet as well. Right. Just again, just checking it. Don't want to have too much clinical lines, too perfect lines, and then occasionally it happens, and as I spot them, I just try to remove them there. Right, let's come back to the jug finally. Fabrics we're much more happy with now. Let's connect this to a tiny bit more paler gray, so it's not just lying on the very dark surface. It has that transition. And the jug will have gorgeous violet mixed with a bit of Payne's gray, mixed with a little bit of ultramarine. So let's just find some most exciting blacks, kind of those darks, violety darks, trying to preserve the colors we already have in place. Maybe it will be more diluted Payne's gray. Okay, where some of that more solid body is going to come in. Maybe there will be a light where my highlight is going to be. If I were to put more of a bluey gray block in preparation for the highlight, then I know around that area I can quite happily go with my darker tones. Okay, so that's what's there. Maybe part of that gray tone could be also translated somewhere here. Okay, let's go back to more violet and Payne's gray, violet to ultramarine. I can shrink some of my reflective blues here, which are quite big. I can work it inside of the handle of my pot next to the pears. That's probably part of that reflection of them. Pot. Okay, I'm going to smudge into this orangey shadow. Remove some of that. Okay, back to more light. Okay. Darker tones for the handle. Where is it most narrow in blackness? Where is the most wide? Again, playing with the existing colors. Unfortunately, some of them will have to disappear because the shadow will need to have that strength. And become a shadow again. I think my pink might need to be shrinking in volume as well. Okay, good. I've got different brushes still loaded with different colors, so I can touch up the form, for example, of the pear here, which I touched up. I think maybe this highlight is too strong. Maybe I get rid of that, of the blue. But the pear will have more definition. Right, any other grays or any other shapes I need to come back to? For example, my pink has lost its form, so I need to check the handle of the jug here. So let's bring a better silhouette, not just for the pink, but that's kind of my way of reducing the size of the unwanted form. Handles grown. It looks too much light here now. But any other darkness just to bring some of that area more settled. That's the back, that's the front, where the reflections are coming. That changes it in that direction. Just work into all of that area. See if that's well, just keep it. Yeah, I think that's will work better for me. As a slightly bigger area, but a bit more flat in color. So it doesn't compete. And I can gently soften it with some oil. That's good. I think that's much better for me. This blob will need to be sorted as well. That's better. Okay, back to my handle, shaped up. So those are little nuances. And now I'm ready for some highlights. So using a small brush, I'll go with some fresh white and find little extra highlights on the jug here. On perhaps little extras on the handle, on the front. I think I might have my own introduction of a highlight here on the tummy of the jug, and just might break some of those lines a little more. highlights on the plate, on a shiny damp surface of the open pear, the cut pear. Again on the plate, right at the front. Back to the pot, mug. Making it spin even more. Is the plate in front of it? Maybe the plate is in front of it. So having that a little encouragement of the surface. Surface reflection. I need a little tail for stalk for the pear. Let's use a smaller brush for it. Okay, that's good. Now let's overlook the whole painting. Any of the redirections of the reds and the chair. I think that might be done very quickly. I think that perspective is a little bit more calmer, and that red instead of lighter tones is a bit more calmer as well. Maybe that red will be back to the oriental fabrics. I think there's something a little bit more broken there. That's better. Just trying to unite two parts of the painting. It's good. That's all good. Dab of darker red here, maybe a little stronger. And perhaps at the base here as well. Just want to make those reflections a little more sharper. And I'm going to stop at that. So lots of exciting things on the go. Very important to have some lovely runniness to our oils. In parts of today, my surface was a little bit more absorbent than I wanted to. So just persevering, bringing that shine to the surface, bringing that interaction of one color smudging into another, helping colors to support each other without being overly perfect, and just persevering, having that transition between one color to another, having that playfulness of the colors running into each other, interacting with each other. So thank you very much for being with me today. I look forward to seeing your work in the future and seeing you in my further classes. So thank you and bye-bye for today.